Excited to be here with you today and very happy to have Nick Katsianis and Colby Stream from Page One Power, who are going to be talking to us about manual link building. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar today will last no more than about an hour. We have about 40 minutes of content and then definitely some time saved at the end to answer questions. If you do have any questions, please enter them in the question box. And finally, the presentation today is being recorded. You'll get a link to the recording tomorrow or at the latest on Thursday. So again, welcome. We have people logging in from all over the world. Now let me go ahead and introduce Nick and Colby. Both of them are from Page One Power. Nick Katsianis is a project manager there. And Colby Stream is also a project manager at Page One Power. Page One is a custom link building firm that is located in Boise, Idaho. So we think that they have a lot to offer in their understanding of the whats and whys and hows of manual link building. I'm going to let them take over and tell you a little bit more about themselves and get started with the presentation on building links. Remember, if you have questions, just enter them in the question box.
All right, thank you, Susan. This is Nick Katsianis, and like she said, we have Colby Stream with us as well. We're both project managers here at Page One Power, and super excited to talk to you guys a little bit about what we do and the value in building links. Really, to start out, what is a link, right? Maybe a lot of you know, maybe some don't. Really, it's a kind of like a bridge, or you can think of it as a vote for your website, right? Basically, if you think of links as a currency of Google, the more links you have out there on the web pointing back, voting for your website, they're on good, relevant, good quality sites, the better you're going to rank in Google. It's one of the top ranking factors in the Google algorithm. So that's, in a nutshell, that's a little bit about what a link is and the value behind it. Colby, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. We'll just look at a few more things here. Your analogy of a bridge is great. It's also a virtual handshake or a citation and a referral of trust and credibility. You're certainly not going to link to somebody that you don't trust. You're not going to send people to another website that is going to damage your credibility by linking to them. And so it's not just a bridge to get from A to B, but it's a trusted bridge.
Right. Well said. So why are they important? Again, you can really think of links as the currency of Google. Okay, again, very, very big ranking factor in Google, but the important thing is doing it the right way. How do I get links to my website? And that we'll jump into that a little bit later here. But again, what do we all want when we have our websites, when we have our online business? We're really, most of the time you're really looking for organic traffic. You're trying to improve your rankings. You're trying to push more people to your website. You're trying to improve your keyword rankings in the organic search results. Page one, if you can get onto page one of Google for whatever your keywords may be, that's a very powerful place. How do you get there? There's a number of different ranking factors. Again, links are at the top of that list. So, that's probably one of the most important reasons why links are important. If you want to rank in the long term, you got to have link building. So what types of links are really going to get you there? One thing that we do here at Page One Power that has been the core of our philosophy for a long time has been a relevancy first link building firm. Okay, and that's that's a little subjective. If you have let's say, okay, for our examples we have a little bit later in the presentation here, say your business operates in the travel and hospitality niche. The types of sites that you're going to be going after to try to build and develop links for your business, they don't necessarily always have to just be in the travel and hospitality niche. You can make different connections to different types of industries that will still make sense for you to get links on those sites pointing back to your website. So, the relevancy it's a little subjective. You want to have a natural distribution of types of links from different types of industries in your backlink profile. but still keeping in mind relevancy within the broad spectrum of industries and niches that you operate in. And so moving on from that, what's another aspect that we look at in finding relevancy and good sites to identify good linking opportunities on for your website? One big thing that we look at here at Page One Power is user intent or user experience. That's one thing that Google really strives for is creating a great experience for the user on whatever kind of website that you have. And Colby, maybe you can jump into that a little more here.
Well, I think one of the really important points, especially you're making here about relevancy, is it's really easy to tie ourselves into relevancy in terms of a niche. So you touched on this. My clients travel. Every link I build needs to be in the travel niche, and it goes into this because that's not the case. Not always the case. We want to think about when a person clicks on that link and goes to our client website. Does it make sense, and does that provide a good user experience? So internally, when our link builders are building links, we're always asking the question, from this site, if someone clicks on the link and goes to our client site, does it make sense? It doesn't necessarily have to be in the same niche, but it should serve a side audience that it makes sense to go to our client's website. And our next slide here says it well. When we have that user experience, Google loves that. And so the reward there is organic search traffic. Links, if it's a link that a person clicks on and it's not useful to them, they just pogo stick back, hit that back button. That's not something Google wants to see. They want links to make sense for people to click through on, a good user experience, and thus those are the links that build organic search traffic.
So another part of our philosophy here at Page One Power is that we have a kind of a people first approach to our link building. It's very manual what we do. We don't automate our processes at all. It's not back in the day, 3-4 years ago, where when you could rank in Google #1 overnight, to where you could spam the web, get a bunch of non-relevant, kind of weird links pointing to your website, and then you'd rank #1 overnight. That's not what we're about. We really believe in people. Our outreach that we do when we're identifying target sites for our clients that would be good sites for our clients to be linking on. We're reaching out to actual website owners. We're having conversations. We're picking up the phone. We're building links based off the merit of our clients' websites. We're developing links, and you really can't do that anymore without the real people-to-people interaction. So that's another core philosophy of Page One Power, and really in any type of link building that anybody does is what you should really put at the forefront.
Yeah, so how do we do that? The first thing, and so many people tend to overlook this, is really just that research, going out and getting acquainted with what's in the niche and who's in the niche and who the audience is. So in a little bit, Susan's going to talk about one tool that we use to do that, which is BuzzSumo. And then you have to identify your targets and determine value. We're going to look at some links in just a minute, and Nick's going to talk a little bit about the different types of value in links and what makes them valuable. Not all links are the same. And then just to really hit that point on the head again, it's not about getting a whole bunch of prospects and spam emailing them and doing automated outreach and follow-up. It's about a people-to-people interaction that is personal and really displays that value on why they should link and what that link's going to do for them.
So again, I think this slide just kind of touches on what we've already said. It's not a quick win type game. There are no shortcuts. It's link building is a long-term endeavor. There are no real automated ways to go about manual link building anymore. There are tools out there that certainly support your efforts, but in terms of automation from what it was considered to be, years ago, and with link building, it's a very different game now. And we got it right there on the slide. Quality wins the race. That is certainly one thing that you really have to dedicate yourself to in terms of SEO and building your online brand is identifying good quality wins to help push your keywords up in the ranks and drive organic traffic to your website. So now we're going to take a look at a couple examples here, and we're going to go back to that travel and hospitality niche here, and look at some of the different things that we look at Page One Power when we're really assessing link quality. Resource type of links. So if you scroll down the page here, you can see we have a list of hotel accommodations. Okay, and this is on a funeral home web page. You can see, when you think about, okay, where would be a good place for me to get a link for my hotel that I run? Funeral homes probably isn't the first thing that you think about. And that kind of goes into really identifying the various industries and niche that your company serves, and you can't do that without doing the good old-fashioned research. It's really about your ability to make connections. That's what makes especially at Page One Power, a good link builder from a great link builder. It is really about making those different types of connections and really digging deep for the different kinds of industries that you could serve. For example, here you can see this funeral home has a list of hotel accommodations. So one of the aspects that we look at here is, okay, well, right here on this page, it lists hotel accommodations. Google reads that page and it makes that association. So when somebody is actually looking for hotel accommodations in that city, it's going to read those various keywords on the page and assign a certain value to that. Another thing you might look at is up in the browser bar, where it actually has the name of the website. It's a very clean URL: postfuneraldirectors.com, resources, helpful links. And when you have a lot of truncated or kind of jarbled information or text up there, it kind of confuses the Google bot, and it makes it hard for them to read and understand what that page is about. So that's another thing we look at. Scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the page, we can see that this is actually a website that was updated in 2016. It's at the very, very bottom. It has that date stamp on it. That tells us that, okay, this is another great site to reach out to. People, the website owner, the webmaster of the site is actually keeping it updated. There's user engagement on the site. It's definitely one that's worth reaching out to, because we're probably going to get a response back. So there are various things that you have to look at to really assess the quality of a website, and you can't do that through any kind of automated process. It's that human interaction again that, it's kind of cliche, but it's using your mind as a tool to really determine what would be a good site. It's kind of hard to find any other tools that can really do that. Looking at this other example here, it's somewhat similar to this. It's the Fashion Outlets of Chicago. It's a mall in Chicago, right? Same concept. They have their hotels and accommodation pages. They've got all these different hotels here have links to the hotel website. They also have the name, the address, and some of them have the phone number for the hotel. That really lends itself very good to local signifiers and in ranking for local search when somebody types in hotels in Chicago. Again, we have a pretty clean URL structure. This site is ran by real people. To get a link on here, you have to reach out to the actual person running the website. So those are the human elements that we look at. Other things that we look at that we won't go into detail about, but certain types of metrics: trust flow, citation flow, user engagement, website traffic. There are other things, but first and foremost, what you should look at is the human element of a website. This third one that we have, this is a link on Forbes, and this is going to lend well into what Susan is going to jump into here in a bit about utilizing BuzzSumo and how that can assist in your link building efforts. But you can see this one is a little different. This isn't a resource page, obviously, right? It's an article on Forbes. Another strategy and resource types of link building, or research types of link building, is identifying mentions of your brand or your company on various articles out on the web that are contextual links. You can see throughout this article here that there are links, there are different hotels mentioned in this article. again, it's the human element of getting, that mention of your brand or your company or your hotel linked up in this article, and you're reaching out to the person who wrote this article, or you're reaching out to the editors at Forbes and referencing this article and requesting, hey, I saw you guys, talked about our business in here. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Would you mind putting a link in the article? A lot of times, these can be very, very big wins. Forbes.com, that's a great link. That's about as good as you can get. And you're not even having to actually write the content. So that's, another thing that we look at is, let's see where our companies, where our clients are being talked about on the web. And that, that's a natural link with a lot of times not a whole lot of work put behind it, but it's still, once again, touching on that human element of link building.
We're going to pass it off to Susan here in a second. I want to talk just for a moment about how we use the BuzzSumo tool in link building, and then Susan's going to go a little more in depth. So we'll use the BuzzSumo tool for a lot of different ways. One that Susan's really going to go into is that, great content is content that's worth linking to. And so we'll use the tool to look at, does our client have great content? How do we build that great content? But we'll also use it for this sort of research when, when Nick is talking about going out and finding these different places we can get links, we can use BuzzSumo to find out, is that content out there? Has that content been written on? Can we write that content and go out and get links that are in content, but content that we have written? And then it's great for finding influencers too. So if our client already has content or a resource on their site, we can really use BuzzSumo to go out and find those influencers, those people who are already in that niche, and reach out to them to either mention on social media, or BuzzSumo, provides people who have websites too, so we can see, where is their website, and can we reach out to them for a link, or to ask if we can write something on their site that then would have a link in it. So with that, I think we're going to pass it off to Susan and let her go more in depth on the BuzzSumo tool.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciated what you both said. I was especially thinking about the part where you mentioned how personal relationships are key, and people linking to people is the essence of what you advocate. I love that perspective. So that was definitely really helpful insight into the process of building links. Just really quickly, if you aren't familiar with BuzzSumo, I thought I would just tell you a little bit about us. We offer a tool to help content marketers and publishers improve their content through research, amplification, and monitoring. Now, we talk a lot about the process of content marketing as an ongoing cycle of research, amplification, and monitoring. If you guys could just go ahead and change the slide, that would be great. Now, this is, I guess, a picture of how we see the process of content marketing. Research is when you're looking at the types of content that your audience is going to appreciate. Amplification is when you're looking for people who can help increase the distribution of your content. And then monitoring is monitoring any content assets that you've created, and that feeds back into the system, becoming part of the research for your next piece. We call this process RAM, and at BuzzSumo we offer tools that can help with each stage of this process. There's both a free and a paid version of our tool. Now, at BuzzSumo, we love data, and you might be wondering, okay, what's the link here between BuzzSumo and link building? If you are a content creator, one of the things that you're hoping to do in most cases is to get links for your content so that it has a wider distribution. Now, what we talk about a lot is data-driven content marketing. So I wanted to tell you the story of what our data shows about the effectiveness of content marketing in gaining links and shares. Earlier this year, our team and the team at Moz worked together to analyze the shares and links of 1 million posts. They came from over 600,000 domains. And the low level of content engagement that we found was absolutely striking. So if you are a content marketer, you definitely want to give this some thought. 50% of the randomly selected posts we looked at received 8 shares or less. 75% of those posts received less than 39 shares. 75% of those posts achieved 0 referring domain links. So let me just read that again. 50% got less than 8 shares. 75% got less than 39 shares. and a full 3/4 of the posts that we looked at had 0 referring domain links. So there's definitely a lot of content out there that is not attracting shares and links. Now, there are a lot of reasons that an individual piece of content would not be heavily shared and not heavily linked to. I think some of the things that Nick and Colby mentioned are definitely part of the picture. You know, maybe it's a site that's not updated much or things like that. But another thing that I think we need to weigh in is the concept of content shock. Mark Schaefer has coined the term, and he means that there's simply so much content available that people can't take advantage of it all. So I think in this content world where there's so much available, we definitely have to think about how to increase the distribution of our content. Now, this slide illustrates illustrates a little bit more fully how rare it is for content to get a lot of links. Most of it, as I said, is getting few or no links, and the content also clearly indicates that there's not a normal distribution when it comes to links. In addition to the glut of content represented in that first blue bar on the left, that's the content that gets no or few links, there are other outliers that acquire many, many links. Now, this distribution looks similar even for really prolific and popular sites like BuzzFeed and the NewYorkTimes.com. So at BuzzSumo, we thought it would be great to see what we can learn from the content that does get a lot of links. So let's begin with the basics. We're going to flip back to this slide that has the research, amplification, and monitor sequence on it. So the basics are this: research what resonates with your audience and produce content that they like. Amplify your content by working with influencers to broaden your distribution. Monitor content trends and your content performance. In other words, in this type of content landscape, knowing what content is more likely to gain shares and links is important information to have as you create your content. And it's important to keep an eye on the content landscape to know what's trending. Today, I'm going to focus on the types of content that are most likely to gain links and shares. So here's something to keep in mind. People share and link for different reasons. Both are important and both are a way of increasing the reach of your content. For the most part, our studies showed that there is little correlation between content shares and links. And the exception is, we're going to take a look at that. There is an exception to it, and we're going to take a closer look at content with 10,000 or more shares. In those cases, there was also a high number of links. Now, as this slide shows you, there is some content that can hit that sweet spot, content types that are both well shared and get lots of links. It's our opinion, and the opinion of others as well, that links are harder to get than shares. If you think about it, anyone can share. You know, it takes very little effort to click a like button or to share a URL, but not everyone has a blog that they can use to link to the content they like. So we wanted to find out more about the content that was produced by sites where there was a high correlation between shares and links. The sites that are listed on this slide had the highest correlation between shares and links. If you could go ahead and flip to the next slide, that'd be great. Yeah, so the sites that are listed here, the breast cancer site, the New York Review of Books, Pew Research, and The Economist had the highest correlation in our study between shares and links. So we took a look at their content and thought about these sites. These are all respected sites. They're regularly publishing content about their area of interest, and they often cite research. Basically, they're serious sites publishing research. So here's the takeaway. If you want to get links for your content, you need to create serious opinion-forming journalism. That got higher shares than the other types of content we looked at. It also got significantly more links. If you could go ahead and flip to the next slide, that'd be super. So content that is more likely to acquire links is serious opinion-forming journalism. A second type is new insight that is based on in-depth research. That always got both higher shares and significantly more links in our research. Long-form content, and by that I mean content that is more than 1,000 words long, consistently got more shares and links than the other articles in our study. list post also got more referring domain links than average. I think list posts, people have a lot of different opinions about those. We love them, we hate them. We're very rarely neutral about them, but the data and the research shows that if you use list posts, you will get more referring domain links than the average content. Another popular format is why posts. We define why posts as any post that has a headline that begins with the word why. And why posts in our studies got more referring domain links than the other content that we looked at. Now, so that's the list of to-dos. We also took a look at the type of content that that got less shares and links than other things. So based on what we've observed about sites where there's a high correlation between shares and links, and based on our other research, we've concluded that there are some types of content that are less likely to get links. So here you go, anything short. And by short, I mean less than 1,000 words. I was talking with someone the other day, and they said that I think their blog editor, when they edit it, tells them to write really short content. So if yours is saying that, that's probably not a good idea. Another type of content that is less likely to get links is content that is simply entertaining, especially quizzes and videos. Now, here's the thing. These draw more shares than links. So if you're working on a campaign and your primary metric that you want to pursue is shares, then you can use this fact as a positive, entertaining quizzes or videos. But if you're looking to build links to your content, quizzes and videos that are simply entertaining are less likely to get links. Another type of content that is less likely to get links is content that is lacking in a new insight. So what do I mean by that? I mean that it's repeating the results from prior published studies, or it's advice that's not backed up by research. So all of these types of content are less likely to gain links. Short form, entertaining quizzes or videos. Maybe we'll ask Nick and Colby to tell us later if they've ever pursued a link to a cat video. I'm guessing no. I might like to share those on Facebook, but I'm probably not linking up my content to them. So I think when you're producing content that's short, simply entertaining, or that's just repeating results of other studies, I think you have to begin to ask yourself if that's worth your time. If you're working on a strategy that includes building links, then you might find it best to devote the time that you've spent there on something else. All right, so here's a quick how-to. This is a putting it into action sort of plan. The first thing that I would recommend doing in terms of creating content that is likely to gain links would be to find out what your audience likes. What content are they already linking to? What content are they already sharing? I think that you can use shares in this context just to find out about topics that people are responding to. So what I have on this screen is an example of a most shared search for content marketing strategy. And what BuzzSumo does is it shows you the content on your topic that is getting the most shares. So you can also use the tool to see if the content that got a lot of shares got a lot of links. We have a button beside each piece of content that says view backlinks. If you click on that, we'll give you a real-time list of any backlinks to that content. Now, you can also use this list just to find topics that are resonating with your audience, and then apply our tips to make it more link-worthy. So here's an example. You might ask yourself if you could provide a fresh or insightful take on a topic. Sometimes the answer is just going to be no, and in those cases, it might be best to turn your attention to a different topic where you can contribute something fresh or offer new insight. Now, and here's an example of how I would apply it to this list. For example, using SEO to maximize your content marketing strategy. I might ask myself if I could do research about sites that have good SEO and those that don't, and then draw conclusions about what works. So I might add a research element to that. Here's another one. You could take something that is simple and make it more in depth. So one of the things on this list is content marketing that worked in 2015. Could I analyze those trends from a 5-year or a 10-year period? Maybe look at the performance of content marketing over a longer period of time and create a more in-depth report on a topic that obviously was of interest to my audience. If one of these pieces is really short, could I write something longer? Maybe provide more information, perhaps add examples or real life case studies to a piece of content that was a great topic people were interested in, but it was short and could use some real life examples. I could also use a similar topic, but possibly rewrite it as a why post or a list, because remember, we know that those are more likely to gain links. So for example, this piece, why your Hispanic content marketing isn't working. That's a great example of using a why to begin a piece of content. You could apply it maybe why using SEO will increase the effectiveness of your content marketing strategy. So I agree with what I think it was Nick was saying earlier about the human element in all of this. I think a lot of times at BuzzSumo we get questions from people who they want to know about automating things, and we're all about using tools to get things done more efficiently. But at the end of the day, even when you have the greatest set of tools available, you still are going to have to put the time and the thinking effort into these things. So you might be asking yourself, is it worth it? And I would say yes. Remember that earlier picture of how much content is out there just sitting on the internet, no shares, no links. Yes, I think it's definitely worth it. And if links are your goal, then a research-based approach could really be a game changer for you. So as you're applying all that Nick and Colby discussed about how to build links, also keep in mind, it all begins with your content. I found this quote at Moz and I thought it was great. All link building must begin with something worth linking to. So maybe later on today, maybe later on this week, take a look at your site. Take a look at your site from an outsider's perspective. You're going to want to look for some of those things that Nick mentioned earlier. Does your site reflect that it's been updated recently? What do your links look like? Are they clear? Is it something that a Google bot could easily read? And then take a look at your content and ask yourself, do I have the types of content that someone would want to link to? And if I do, how can I continue to produce that kind of content? And if I don't, what are a couple of content pieces that I could produce over the next month or two that would really attract links to my site? All right, well, that is the end of the official presentation. I definitely wanted to invite you all to respond to us in email. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to us via email or via Twitter. My address is Susan at BuzzSumo, and I'm sure Nick and Colby will give you theirs. You can also find me on Twitter at Susan C. Moeller. Now, we got a lot of questions, and it looks like most of them are for page one. So let me go ahead and ask a question. Here we go. The first one is, how is user experience judged by Google? That's from Amy, and I'll just let you guys take over on that one.
You want to take this one?
Yeah, yep, sure thing. So how is user experience judged by Google? I mean, I don't think there's one clear answer, but to attempt to answer at least part of it is there are different things that Google looks at when they've been in the sense of how they've updated their algorithm over time. When you're looking at a website, and let's say you go to a website that is keyword stuffed or it doesn't have unique content, is duplicate content, it's not helpful. Google can really recognize those types of patterns, those types of things that really determine whether it's a good website or not. That's very much part of the user experience and how it's judged, and that's how websites rank. Perhaps another aspect of that is Google doesn't only look at what links are going to your website. It looks at other links that are linking to links that are linking to your website, and if those are relevant, if there's co-occurrence of similar types of keywords on the page, reading really what the page is about. And that's how it determines what is really ranking for a specific set of keywords, perhaps. So that could be, there is at least, part of an answer for you, Amy. Colby, do you have anything to add to that?
I think I might add, and I don't remember if this is verified or not, but there's that thought that Google could be paying attention both to like conversion rates in the search, how many people are clicking through, how many people are pogo sticking, so clicking on a result and then tabbing back very quickly, and that Google's using that as a sort of a user experience. I can't remember what the newest stuff says, what the correlation is on that, and if we have verification from Google if they're actually doing that. But it's that sort of thing. They look at are people really enjoying what they're seeing, and that user experience is very micro because it might be term by term. There might be terms that they have you ranking for a bit. People are clicking in and clicking right back, but then there are other terms people are clicking and staying. So there's some theory there about how Google might measure user experience as well.
Great, thanks. So here's another one for you. Does it matter how many links are in a single piece of content? Does Google have guidelines of when there are too many links in an article and they would deem it no longer user-driven and possibly, yeah, I think the rest of the question was about would they begin to see too many links as user-driven or as just an SEO tactic?
I think you have to look at the what's the word I'm looking for? You have to look at again the human element of that. I mean, obviously, if you're writing articles that are stuffed to the brim with links just for the sake of putting links in articles, obviously that's not valuable to the user. It's distracting. How Google views that. I mean, at one point in time, there was a thought of Google only reads so many links on a particular page or an article, and if you kind of reach that threshold, then whatever other links are within that page or article aren't even going to be recognized. I'm not really sure exactly where that's at now, but it was more, I think it's more conceptual than anything else. So does it matter how many links are in a single piece of content? I think absolutely, and you have to think about the user experience in terms of that.
And from an SEO perspective, certainly you don't want to have too many links in that article. You're splitting up the link equity between links. You're sending the user out a lot. But in a lot of cases, we're not going to get to that. Like if you're writing an article where you're really going, oh, there are too many links in here, you probably need to think about why you're linking in every single case.
Great. Here's another one. If you have to really use the relationship aspect of link building, how user-driven is the process? If the value isn't obvious and apparent and you're having to sell and convince someone to link to your content, is there really an actual correlation there? Should you have to sell the link to be added, or should it be clear and make sense so selling, in quotes, isn't really needed?
I mean, I think if we followed that logic, then you would never have to market a really great product again. People don't always see the value inherently just by skimming through something. And so there is a certain amount of selling. Now, we're not saying hyping it up. We're saying selling and being clear about what the value add is. But the relationship adds to that. Who do you listen to? You listen to people that you have a relationship with, people that you trust. My wife sometimes says like she can say something to me and I don't take it into account, but then if a friend says it, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally get that. It's just that same sort of correlation. Like if someone's saying it to you, you don't trust, you're not gonna you're just gonna look at it and go, oh, I don't know. But when you have that relationship, it doesn't feel so much like selling, it feels more like recommending.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the whole concept of content shock comes into play there too, because, it's your content could be a perfect fit for another piece of content and just have not been discovered yet. So I think because there is so much content available, it's impossible for someone to know everything that is available. Here's a question from Tamara. How do you find where a client is being mentioned on the web if a link to the site is not in the content? In BuzzSumo, there's a way to do that, and then I'll let Nick and Colby add if something. In BuzzSumo, you can do a search for where your site is being mentioned, and we can pull up for you any content that mentions your site. You can also set an alert in BuzzSumo, and our alerts, I feel really confident recommending them just because I've done some research into how powerful they are. And we have in our alert section the capability to notify you anytime your brand is mentioned. So that would give you a place to know if a client is mentioned, even if they're not linked to. And the reason I'm really confident about how effective these are is I was doing some research around US political candidates, and because I figured there'd be a lot out there, and I was monitoring for mentions of Hillary Clinton using BuzzSumo. I intended to do it for a day, but in an hour I got 83 alerts to content that mentioned her. I had the same alert running with Google and I got 3 alerts. So definitely we do have a powerful solution to let you know anytime your client is being mentioned. Would you guys add anything to that from your perspective?
I think we use just Google a lot for things that are, one of the links you saw that we got we called a fresh mention. It was actually an article that was written back in 2012. You can use Google to find those things, where you use your brand name and you search it exactly. If you know that your client was acquired at some point, you can search, those sort of articles and find if there's a mention in there without a link. So if you're doing stuff where you're not tracking, mentioned in the last 30 days, you want to go back further, Google can be very powerful for that.
Thanks. This next question is, do you think a lot of content lacks shares because there's such a big trend in content marketing and a lot of content is being pushed purely for SEO? I guess I'm not sure about that. I think it might be a chicken and egg. We definitely think that there's a lot of content out there, and part of that I'm sure is because content is now a part of SEO considerations. But I think what our research showed would be valuable in any case because we looked at content that was getting the most links. So we were looking at content that got the most links. We also looked at the content that got the most shares. So in a sense, I think that the research we did is still valuable, and whether or not the content is being created purely for SEO purposes, in some ways it wouldn't matter if your content was highly shared why you created it, because you've met the goal that you've set. All right, so we have another question. Do share numbers reflect the domain it was shared on or subscribers instant republishes? Yeah, I'm sure that that's the case, Devin. Some of the sites that we looked at were very highly shared sites. So we did a couple of things in our research to try and limit the effect of that highly shared content. Specifically, we did a purely random sample as a control group, and we also then created a subset of our research for content that was most heavily shared from larger sites with bigger distribution channels, if you will. So we tried to account for that, and then also just acknowledge that within BuzzSumo's most shared section, where our largest database is, we're looking for content primarily that was socially shared. So content that has never been shared would not have been represented in our survey as highly as content that was heavily shared. So we kind of footnoted that. Well, not even footnoted it. We put it in the top couple paragraphs as we described the methodology. Let's see, what kind of content is less likely to acquire links? From our perspective, from the research, it was short content, less than 1,000 words, content that was simply entertainment value, quizzes and videos in particular, those got more shares. They did not get as many links. Also, content that lacked any new insight, that was sort of a recycling, if you will, of something everyone already knew. What about you guys at page one? What do you see as content that is less likely to get links?
Advertorial content.
Yep. Content that is super narrow. So my link builders are always coming to me saying, hey, for like a geolocal client, for example, if it was an apartment site, every single article on the blog is written to people in their city. And, like the city is in the title. So we always encourage clients, like, write that article to a big general audience and then have a section of it that's, geolocal directed. So like content that's just too narrow, it's really hard to get links.
Great tip. And then let's see, here is another one. Do you have some ideas on how to approach website owners to open the relationship for backlinks?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's one way that works for every business or for every person. It's A lot about creating a value proposition, and when you're reaching out to somebody to link back to your website, you have to have something helpful, something resourceful for users of their website, and you have to highlight that to them, and that's kind of hard to do. It has to be something unique that they don't already have on their website. Another thing, it kind of depends on your strategy, what you're really going for. If you're looking to write an article on somebody else's blog, a lot of times what really might pique somebody's interest is match the tone and mood of that person's website and the kind of content that they're putting on their website within your outreach. So I mean, there are a couple things there, but that's there's all kinds of different things you can do. I think being very creative. Setting your email aside from all the other emails they're getting all day of requests to get a link on their website or to write an article on their blog. Get creative with it and position yourself in terms of trying to help them with their website and increase traffic to their website, or help their users be more engaged on their site through the resources that you have or offer, right?
Great. Yeah. So this question is, how can I best use BuzzSumo to understand the relationship of influencers within a category to the top shared content? Great question. I think one of the most helpful parts of the site for doing that is to identify the most shared content in the most shared section of the site. Then click on the View Shares link to find a list of people who shared that content. When you do that, we try and help you get a feel for who on that list has the most influence by ordering our results based on the number of times they get retweeted on average every time they tweet. So in a quick click with BuzzSumo, you can find a list of the most influential people who shared an individual piece of content. And I think, one thing I've done in the past is then I kind of take a look at those influencers themselves and, if you have someone who has an incredible reach with their Twitter feed, obviously that's going to get you some more exposure for your content. The other thing that you can do is you can just look to see who is tweeting a lot. Within BuzzSumo, we have a feature where you can look to see who's tweeting a lot of content related to a keyword. So you can then follow those influencers. You can create an outreach list, and BuzzSumo will begin to pull everything they tweet into a conversations tab so you can keep an eye on what they're talking about. This question is, if your goal of SEO is to drive traffic to your site, are links or shares more important? Would it be a better investment to build links to your site or create content that is share worthy?
I guess it's going to depend here a little bit on the type of traffic you're looking to build. One of the things we really love about link building is that it's a really long-term investment. So you're building traffic that is going to build over time, and a year from now, 2 years from now, is going to be traffic that keeps coming back and keeps coming back. If you're building share-worthy content, and maybe you could speak to this more, Susan, but you got to keep building that content and getting it shared. So that's going to be a really immediate type of thing. Do you know, Susan, what is the sort of fall off rate between, like, if you create a piece of share-worthy content, do you get a lot of the shares up front and then it drops dramatically after a certain amount of time, or is it pretty steady?
Yeah, no, with shares, you get a lot of shares quickly. Links tend to build more slowly. And when we were doing our study, we excluded we only looked at content that had been online for 3 months. Now we had lifetime share totals, so we could, we could see how many times it had been shared, but we wanted to give longer for those links to accrue. So definitely we see content kind of surge forward immediately after it's published. And, if you want to take advantage of that, if you will, ride the wave a bit, it's good to have some amplification strategies in place before you publish the content, because once you've published it, that's the best window for getting those shares. So you want to have your amplification set, have the influencers you want to connect with. Hopefully you've even contacted them already before you're publishing the content. But yeah, that's what we see, is that shares grow quickly and links take longer. All right, and then I think we have time for one more question. If your website isn't optimized for SEO, header tags, meta descriptions, copy, is it worthwhile to create new content and build links, or should you focus on this before attempting link building?
Well, I think if you have the resources to really put both into play at the same time, that'd be ideal. But I mean, obviously, you want to have an optimized website, from the get-go when you first create your website.
Yeah, and there's some plugins that can make that somewhat easy. We use a Yoast plugin, even that for someone who is not well versed in SEO can help give you some tips immediately on how to do that. So great, you have been a super audience and asked so many great questions.